At some point in your life, you noticed that the game was already being played. Not started. Already being played. You arrived mid-game without a rulebook, without anyone sitting you down and explaining the board. You watched the people around you making moves, some of them prospering, some of them struggling, some of them repeating the same losing pattern with the same bewildered expression year after year, and you tried to figure out from observation alone what the rules were. What you concluded, probably, was something close to what most people conclude. Work hard, be careful, hope for luck, manage expectations, protect yourself from disappointment by not wanting too much. Stay realistic, play it safe. These conclusions are not unreasonable. They are what the evidence appears to support when you observe the game from the outside, from the position of someone who does not know the deeper rules. They are the strategy of a chess player who has learned that pieces move but has not yet been told in which directions, and the chess player who does not know the rules can make moves, can push pieces around the board in ways that sometimes produce good outcomes and sometimes do not, but cannot play with any genuine understanding of why outcomes go the way they go. Florence Scovel Shinn believed that most human beings are in exactly this position. Not stupid, not immoral, not lazy or faithless or fundamentally broken, simply unaware of the rules, playing a game that has a precise and knowable structure without access to the rulebook, and suffering as a consequence, not because suffering is inevitable or because the game is designed to produce it, but because a player who does not know the rules will keep making moves that the rules make losing ones. She wrote the rulebook, or rather, she wrote what she believed was her articulation of a rulebook that already existed, that had always existed, that was written not in any human document, but in the structure of reality itself, in the laws governing the relationship between consciousness and circumstance, between the inner world of thought and belief and word and the outer world of event and condition, and the specific concrete daily texture of a life. The Game of Life and How to Play It was published in 1925. Florence Scovel Shinn was a woman working in New York at the edge of several traditions, New Thought, Christian mysticism, metaphysical philosophy, that were themselves at the edge of what the mainstream was willing to take seriously. She was not an academic, she was a practitioner, a woman who had worked with hundreds of people in what she called spiritual counseling, who had watched the same principles produce the same results across the full range of human situations, and who sat down to write what she had observed with the directness and the confidence of someone who has tested the ideas against reality and found them to hold. The book is small, barely 100 pages. The language is direct, sometimes startling, occasionally extravagant in its claims. She does not hedge, she does not offer the careful qualifications of academic philosophy or the measured language of psychological research. She speaks with the authority of conviction, and the conviction is the conviction of someone who has watched what she is describing actually work. Now think about this for a moment. The claims she makes are radical. Not radical in the contemporary political sense, radical in the oldest sense, reaching to the root, to the fundamental structure of how things actually work beneath the surface of ordinary experience. And the root for Shinn is this. Your life is a mirror, not a metaphor, a functional description of how the system operates. The outer world, your circumstances, your relationships, your finances, your health, the specific configuration of events that constitute your daily experience is an outpicturing, a reflection, a projection into visible form of the dominant contents of your inner world, of your habitual thoughts, your deep-seated beliefs, your unexamined fears and unconscious assumptions about what is true and what is possible and what you deserve and what you can expect. Change the inner world with sufficient thoroughness and specificity, and the outer world changes to match it. This is the game. This is the rule at its most fundamental. And the reason most people do not experience this as obviously true, the reason it sounds, to the modern secular ear, like wishful thinking or naive spirituality, is not that the rule is wrong. It is that the inner world is much harder to actually change than it appears. And most people who try to apply the rule do so at the surface level, where it does not work, and conclude that the rule is false rather than that their application was insufficient. Shinn spent her career addressing this insufficiency, pointing out with characteristic bluntness the specific ways in which people undermine their own desires through the very thought patterns with which they try to pursue them. The person who wants prosperity but whose deepest, most ingrained, most automatic response to the thought of money is fear or resentment or a sense of unworthiness. The person who wants love but who has organized their inner world around the expectation of abandonment. the person who wants health but who has built a comprehensive and constantly maintained mental architecture of illness. These are not small obstacles easily cleared by positive thinking. They are the content of the mirror, and the mirror does not distinguish between what you consciously want and what you unconsciously believe. The mirror reflects what is actually there. But here's the strange part. Shinn does not present this as a reason for despair. She presents it with something closer to excitement. Because if the outer world is a reflection of the inner world, then the outer world is not fixed, not determined by external forces beyond your control, not the product of luck or fate or the indifference of the universe to your well-being. It is the product of something that you can actually change, something that is, in principle, entirely within your domain. The inner world, your thoughts, your words, your faith, the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what the world is like and what is possible for you. These are not merely psychological phenomena with psychological consequences. Shinn is claiming something stronger. She is claiming they are causal forces, as real, as operative, as productive of concrete outcomes as any physical action. That the word spoken with conviction has the power to move the mountain of apparent circumstance. That the thought held with clarity and faith becomes, in time, the visible fact. She grounds this in scripture, in the mystical traditions, in the testimony of people whose lives she had watched transformed by the application of these principles. She is not offering theory, she is offering what she believes is the user manual for a system that is already operating, that has always been operating, whether or not you're aware of it. The game is being played. The only question is whether you're playing it, or whether it is playing you. This is where we begin. Look at your life. Not the version of your life you present to the world, not the curated account, the edited narrative, the story with the unflattering parts minimized and the promising parts emphasized. Look at the actual conditions, the specific concrete daily reality of what you have, what keeps recurring, what remains stubbornly present despite your efforts to change it, what keeps coming back in different forms, different people, different situations, different surface configurations, but with the same essential quality. For Shinn, this is your diagnostic reading. The recurring pattern is not bad luck, not the universe's inexplicable preference for making things difficult for you specifically, not the consequence of other people's choices over which you have no influence. It is the outpicturing of something in the inner world, the specific thought pattern or belief or expectation that is so consistently present, so thoroughly embedded in the architecture of how you relate to reality, that it keeps producing the same result the way a consistent input produces a consistent output. This is not a comfortable idea. Shinn was aware of its discomfort and addressed it directly, with the characteristic forthrightness that makes her so different from the softened versions of similar ideas that proliferated after her. She is not saying you deserve the difficulty. She is not saying the difficulty is punishment. She is saying something more neutral and more useful. The difficulty is information. It is the mirror telling you what is in the inner world that you perhaps did not know was there, or did know was there but did not understand was productive of external consequence. The woman who keeps attracting men who eventually abandon her. The man who keeps finding himself in financial emergencies regardless of how much he earns. The person who keeps getting sick at exactly the moments when their life requires them to be well. The business that keeps approaching success and then failing at the final stage. The relationship that keeps arriving at the same impasse through a different route. These are not random, they are specific. They have the specificity of a message. The message is, here is what the inner world is producing. Here is the belief or the fear or the unexamined conviction that is acting as the magnetic force drawing these conditions into repeated manifestation. Shinn calls this the law of karma. The word is Eastern, but her use of it is precise and practical. What you send out returns to you, not as punishment and not as reward, as the inevitable, impersonal, operating consequence of the law. The thought sent out returns as the experienced condition. The word spoken becomes the invitation to the circumstances that match it. The deep belief, held consistently enough and with sufficient emotional charge, becomes the reality encountered. The law operates with the same indifference as the law of gravity. Gravity does not prefer to drop some things and not others. It acts on everything with the same consistency. And the law that Shinn is describing, the law of correspondence between inner world and outer world, between consciousness and circumstance, operates with the same consistency. It does not make exceptions for people who are trying hard or people who mean well or people who are exhausted and would really like a break. It reflects what is actually there. But here's the strange part. The same quality that makes this idea uncomfortable, its impersonality, its refusal to exempt you on the basis of your intentions or your effort or your genuine desire for things to be different, is also what makes it genuinely useful. Because an impersonal law is a manipulable law, you cannot petition gravity for an exception, but you can build a structure that works with the law rather than against it. You can learn to fly by understanding the law deeply enough to use it. Shinn is offering flight, not from the law, through understanding it. The diagnostic reading of the recurring pattern is not the end of the inquiry, it is the beginning. It tells you where in the inner world the work needs to happen. What belief needs to be examined, challenged, replaced? What fear needs to be faced rather than reinforced? What story needs to be rewritten at the root rather than adjusted at the surface? And the rewriting is possible. This is Shinn's central conviction. The inner world is not fixed. The beliefs and fears and expectations that have been producing the recurring pattern are not permanent features of the self. They were installed by experience, by repetition, by the accumulated evidence of a life lived with certain assumptions, and they can be uninstalled, replaced. The mirror can be cleared of the images that have been reflected in it, and new images can be established. Not by pretending the old images are not there, not by the cheerful, willful, surface-level optimism that refuses to acknowledge what the mirror is actually showing, but by the specific, rigorous, honest process of identifying what is actually in the inner world and doing the genuine work of changing it. The word is one of Shinn's primary tools for this work. Not word in the casual sense, word in the sense that the mystical traditions have always used it, the spoken declaration, the affirmation, the prayer, the decree, the specific act of putting into verbal form the truth you are choosing to establish in the inner world in place of the belief you are choosing to release. This is not positive thinking in the shallow sense. It is something more demanding and more precise. It requires that the words spoken be genuinely believed, or at least genuinely aimed at, by the speaker. That it be spoken not as a hope or a wish, but as an acknowledgement of a spiritual reality that already exists in the domain of the invisible and is being called into visible manifestation. The distinction between a wish and a decree is not semantic. It is energetic. It is the difference between asking for something from a position of lack and claiming something from a position of faith. Between the prayer that says, "I hope this will happen," and the word that says, "This is already true in the invisible and I am accepting its manifestation now." Most people spend their entire lives wishing. Shinn is teaching something else. She is teaching the decree, and the decree, spoken with genuine faith, begins, she claims, to move the forces of the invisible toward its manifestation in the visible with the same reliability as the law that drops the apple from the tree. The mirror does not lie, but neither does the law, and the law is entirely on your side if you learn to use it. There are two great laws operating in every human life, and most people have encountered them only in distorted forms. The first they have heard called karma, and they have understood it as cosmic punishment, the universe keeping score. Bad things happening to bad people and good things happening to good people, the ledger balanced eventually if not immediately, justice served on the schedule of eternity rather than of ordinary time. The second they have heard called love, and they have understood it as emotion, the feeling that arises between people in certain relationships, the warmth of family, the passion of romantic connection, the generosity of friendship. Shinn takes both of these ideas and restores them to what she believes is their original, more precise, more powerful meaning. Karma is not punishment. Karma is correspondence, the law that governs the relationship between what is sent out from the inner world and what returns from the outer world. Every thought, every word, every act, and every movement of consciousness in any direction sends out a vibration that returns in kind. Not eventually, not uncertainly, not depending on some cosmic judgment of merit. Automatically, as a function of the law. This understanding transforms the concept from something passive and retrospective, the universe finally getting around to evening the score, to something active and present. You're not waiting for karma to catch up with you. You're creating karma right now, in this moment, in the specific quality of thought you are holding, the specific nature of the word you are speaking, the specific character of the action you are taking or failing to take. The law is operating now, and it is operating in your favor or against your interests based entirely on what you are sending out. Not on what you intend to send out, on what you're actually sending out, including the unconscious, the habitual, the automatic. The thought you do not notice because you have had it so many times it no longer registers as a thought. The expectation so deep it does not feel like an expectation but like a fact. Now here is where the law of love enters, because the law of karma, understood only as correspondence, is neutral. What you send out returns. If what you send out is fear, fear returns. If resentment, resentment returns. If limitation, limitation returns. This is not punitive, it is simply the law. But without something more, without the transformative force that Shinn calls the law of love, the person stuck in patterns of negative sending out is simply trapped. The law they are subject to is the law of their own unconscious programming, and the programming reproduces itself. The law of love is the solvent, and Shinn means something precise by love, not sentimentality, not the romantic feeling, the specific spiritual force, active, creative, dissolving, that operates in the inner world to transmute the heavy metals of fear and resentment and limitation into something that the law of karma can carry in a different direction. She says, love is the fulfilling of the law. What she means is that the person who can bring genuine, non-conditional, spiritually grounded goodwill toward the situation, toward the people involved, toward the possibility of a different outcome, into the inner world is working with both laws simultaneously. They are sending out through karma what love has first transformed in the interior, and what returns is transformed accordingly. But here's the strange part. The hardest application of the law of love is not toward the people you naturally love. The hardest application, and Shinn devotes considerable attention to it, is toward the person, the situation, the circumstance that your ordinary response is to resent, to fear, to hold in the grip of grievance or judgment or the specific, energetically expensive state of unforgiveness. She teaches something she calls blessing, the deliberate, chosen, spiritually motivated act of sending genuine goodwill toward the thing you most want to condemn, toward the person who wronged you, toward the situation that seems most unjust, toward the condition you most want to escape. Not because the wrong was not wrong, not because justice does not matter, but because the energetic reality, the inner world reality that the law of karma reflects back into the outer world, of the person who is holding resentment is a reality of resentment, and resentment sent out returns as resentment, creates conditions that mirror its own quality. The person who blesses their enemy, genuinely, not performatively, is not being naive about the harm that was done. They are being strategic about the law. They are choosing, deliberately and against the natural pull of the ordinary emotional response, to send something different from what the circumstance provoked. To interrupt the karma of resentment by introducing the transmuting force of love at the point where resentment would otherwise be automatic. This is not easy. Shinn does not pretend it is easy, but she insists it is possible, and she insists it works. That the life of the person who masters the practice of blessing, who can genuinely, consistently, spiritually bring goodwill to the things they most want to condemn, begins to show the evidence of the transmuted karma in its external conditions. The enemy becomes neutral. The unjust situation shifts. The blocked supply opens. The recurring pattern changes at its root because the inner world content that was producing it has been genuinely transformed rather than merely suppressed. Now think about this for a moment. The law of karma and the law of love together form the complete operating system of Shinn's philosophy. The law of karma tells you that everything is correspondence, that you are always in relationship with your own sending out, that the outer world is always showing you the inner world. The law of love tells you that the inner world can be transformed, that the transmuting force is available, that the patterns can be changed, that the mirror can be cleared. Together they describe a system that is neither punitive nor arbitrary nor indifferent. A system that is, in the deepest sense, just, operating the same way for everyone, without exception, without favourites, without the arbitrary distribution of grace that the traditional image of a personal god sometimes implies, and a system that is, equally, merciful. Because the law that produces the consequences of your unconscious programming is the same law that will produce the consequences of your awakened, intentional, love-directed sending out. The law is not against you. The law has never been against you. The law is waiting for you to send something different. In the beginning was the Word. Shinn takes this opening of the Gospel of John with complete seriousness, not as metaphor, not as theology about the divine nature of Christ in the orthodox sense, as a precise statement about the creative mechanics of reality. The word, the spoken declaration, the conscious use of language as a creative force is primary. It precedes the manifest world. It is the instrument through which the invisible becomes visible, through which possibility becomes actuality, through which the formless takes form. This is not a casual claim, and Shinn is aware that it sounds, to ears trained in the secular materialist tradition, like fantasy, like the naive belief of someone who has confused the metaphorical power of words with actual causal power in the physical world. She makes the claim anyway, because she believes it is true, and because she has watched it operate. The word spoken with faith and with the understanding of the law is not merely psychological. It is not simply a matter of affirming positive things to yourself until you feel better about your situation, and therefore take more effective action, and therefore produce better results through the ordinary chain of material causation. Shinn is claiming something more direct than that. The word moves something in the invisible that then manifests in the visible. It sets in motion forces that are not visible, but are as real and as operative as any physical force. She distinguishes carefully between two kinds of speech: the word spoken from fear, the habitual, automatic, unconscious expression of limitation and doubt and the expectation of difficulty, and the word spoken from faith, from the deliberate, conscious, spiritually grounded choice to speak what you choose to make true, rather than what the current circumstances appear to confirm. And she identifies the first kind of speech as one of the primary mechanisms through which people imprison themselves, through which the law of karma is fed continuously and unconsciously with exactly the material that produces the conditions they most want to change. The specific vocabulary of lack, the specific verbal expression of fear, the casual, habitual, socially normalized articulation of limitation. I can't afford it. I never have enough. Nothing ever works out for me. I always get sick at this time of year. People always let me down. Money doesn't come easily to me. I'm terrible with relationships. Shinn does not treat these as innocent expressions of honest self-assessment. She treats them as creative acts, as the word being used, unconsciously, habitually, with all the force of deep conviction behind them, to produce and reproduce the conditions they describe. The law does not distinguish between intentional creation and unconscious creation. The law simply responds to what is sent out. And the words spoken habitually, from the deep place of genuine belief in their truth, are sent out with the full force of that belief behind them. But here's the strange part. The same power that imprisons, liberated, is the instrument of freedom. The word that has been used unconsciously to create lack can be used consciously to create supply. The word that has been used habitually to express limitation can be used deliberately to declare abundance. The same creative force is available in both directions, and the turn from one direction to the other is not primarily a matter of effort or of earned spiritual merit. It is a matter of understanding, of choosing, of beginning to use consciously what has always been in use unconsciously. Shinn calls the deliberate use of the word for a specific creative purpose an affirmation or a decree. And she provides examples throughout her book, actual words, actual formulations, that she has used with her clients and herself in specific situations. Financial need, relationship difficulty, health challenges, professional obstacles. She offers the specific language with the directness of a teacher who has found what works and sees no reason to be coy about it. These formulations have a characteristic quality. They do not ask. They declare. They do not express the hope that something will happen. They acknowledge that something is already true in the spiritual realm and is being invited into manifestation in the material realm. Infinite Spirit, open the way for great abundance for me. I am an irresistible magnet for all that belongs to me by divine right. The specificity is deliberate. The declaration of divine right is deliberate. The word irresistible is deliberate, because the word spoken with vagueness produces vague results. The word spoken with specificity and faith produces specific results. Now think about what this requires of the speaker. Not just the saying of the words, the genuine inner alignment with what the words are declaring. Because the word spoken from the lips while the heart simultaneously insists on the opposite, while the deep conviction is that there is no supply, that abundance is not available, that the decree is wishful thinking rather than spiritual law, that word has no power. Or rather, it has less power than the deep conviction contradicting it, and the deep conviction wins. This is why Shinn is not teaching positive thinking in the popular sense. The popular version, repeat affirmations until you feel better, misses the most important element. The element of genuine faith, of the inner alignment between the word spoken and the spiritual reality the word is acknowledging. Developing that alignment, cultivating the genuine inner knowing that the supply is already present in the invisible, that the manifestation is already underway, that the word has already moved the forces that will produce the visible result. This is the actual work, not the mechanics of the word, the inner reality from which the word is spoken. The word is the expression of the faith. The faith is the substance of things hoped for, and the substance, the invisible, spiritual, already existent reality of what is being decreed, is the actual creative force that the word releases into manifestation. Not the word alone, the faith the word expresses. And the faith, genuine, specific, rooted in the understanding of the law, is cultivated through exactly what Shinn describes throughout her book. Through the stories of the law operating, through the testimony of the impossible becoming possible when the right word was spoken from the right inner place, through the accumulated evidence of a woman who watched this work hundreds of times in the full range of human situations and became so convinced of its reality that she could not help but write it down. The word and the world it makes are not separate things, they never were. Every human life, in Shinn's understanding, has a pattern, not the pattern you've been trying to impose on it, not the plan you have constructed from your own knowledge of your own desires and your own assessment of what is achievable, and your own map of the route from here to there. Something anterior to all of that, something that existed before you had opinions about it, and will persist whether or not your planning accommodates it. She calls it the divine plan, or the perfect plan, the specific, individual, spiritually determined configuration of what your life is here to be and do, the unique expression that your soul is meant to make in the world, the specific supply that has your name on it, the specific right place, the specific right work, the specific right relationships, all of it already existing in the divine mind, already prepared, already waiting to manifest through you as you. This is one of the most comforting and one of the most challenging ideas in Shinn's entire framework. Comforting because it implies that there is enough, that your good is specific and sufficient and held for you, that you are not in competition with every other person for a limited supply of good things, that what is yours by divine right cannot be taken by anyone else and cannot be missed through ordinary bad luck, that the supply and the right relationship and the right work are already there, in the invisible, with your name on them. Challenging because the divine plan is rarely the plan you have been making. The human plan, produced by the fearful, limited, past-informed, desire-driven ego, is almost always smaller than the divine plan. It is built from what the individual has been told is possible, from what they have seen available to people like them, from the specific horizon of their own experience. The divine plan is built from the perspective of infinite intelligence that can see the whole, that knows what the individual is capable of, that has access to resources and routes and possibilities that the ordinary planning mind cannot conceive. And these two plans, the human and the divine, are frequently in conflict. The human plan says, this specific person is the right relationship for me. The divine plan may be preparing someone the individual has not yet met, through circumstances that the individual's current plan would prevent if followed. The human plan says, this specific job or this specific business is the right work for me. The divine plan may be directing towards something that the individual has never considered, through a path that the current plan forecloses. The human plan says, this is how the supply will come. The divine plan may be routing the supply through a completely unexpected channel that the individual's planning mind cannot see. Shinn teaches something that is one of the most counterintuitive moves in her entire framework. She teaches the release of the plan, not the release of desire, not the abandonment of direction, the specific, deliberate, spiritually motivated release of the specific plan for how the desired outcome will be achieved. The opening of the channel, through which the infinite intelligence can route the supply by releasing the grip on the particular route that the finite intelligence has decided must be the right one. She calls this non-resistance, and she means something specific by it, not passivity, not the abdication of action, the specific inner quality of the person who holds their desired outcome clearly, while releasing their attachment to the particular form it takes and the particular route by which it arrives. This is extremely difficult for the human ego to accept, because the ego's sense of being in control, sense of agency, of authorship of its own life, is intimately tied to the having of a plan, The specific route, the specific person, the specific form. To release the specific is to release apparently the control, but here's the strange part. The releasing of the specific is, in Shinn's framework, not the surrender of control, but its expansion. Because the control being exercised, the human plan, the specific route, the particular form, is operating within the very limited map of the individual's current knowledge and current horizon. And what is released into is the infinite map of the divine intelligence that can see everything the individual cannot see. You are not trading a large control for a small one. You are trading a small control for a large one. The divine plan is larger than the human plan. Always. Not because the human plan is wrong about what is wanted, but because the human plan is necessarily limited in its conception of how the wanted thing arrives and in what form it manifests. She uses a formulation that she repeats in various forms throughout her work. Let the divine plan of my life now come to pass. Not my plan, not the plan I have constructed from my limited perspective. The divine plan, the perfect plan. The plan that infinite intelligence with full access to the whole picture has already prepared. And the releasing of the human plan as the genuine, specific, spiritually grounded act of releasing the particular route while maintaining the clear desire, opens the channel for the divine plan to begin its operation. The blocked supply that was blocked by the individual's insistence on a particular route suddenly finds another channel. The right person who was prevented from arriving by the individual's attachment to the wrong person suddenly becomes available. The right work that was invisible because the individual's focus was fixed on a different kind of work suddenly comes into view. Not because the universe changed, because the channel opened, and the divine plan, which was always there, always ready, always prepared, began to move through the opening. The danger of planning is not the planning itself, it is the rigidity of the plan, the insistence that the plan is the only right one. The grip on the particular form so tight that the divine supply cannot find the opening. Release the grip, not on the desire, on the route. Let the divine plan show you a better way. It already has one. Money is a subject that most spiritual traditions approach with ambivalence at best. The camel through the eye of the needle. The renunciation of attachment to material things is a prerequisite for spiritual development. The suspicion of wealth as a distraction from the higher life. The subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, implication that the spiritually advanced person ought to be, if not actually poor, at least indifferent to the question of material supply. Shinn rejects this entirely, with characteristic directness and with what appears to be genuine indignation on behalf of people who have been told that poverty is spiritual. Lack, she argues, is not spiritual. Lack is the outer world manifestation of a particular inner world belief, the belief in lack. And the belief in lack is not a belief that God endorses or spiritual law requires, it is a human error. A failure to understand and apply the law of supply that operates, available to everyone, as consistently and as impersonally as every other spiritual law. The supply in her framework is already there, infinite, inexhaustible, not somewhere outside the reach of ordinary people, present in the invisible dimension, what she calls the infinite storehouse, and available to anyone who understands how to claim it. Anyone who can bring their inner world into alignment with the spiritual reality of abundance and then open the channel through which the invisible supply manifests in the visible. The channel is faith, the faith that there is enough, that what is needed is already prepared, that the supply is on its way, and the specific blockages to supply are the specific beliefs that contradict this faith. Beliefs about money that most people have never examined because they received them so early, and from such authoritative sources, family, culture, early experience, that they have sunk below the level of conscious opinion into the level of deep conviction. Money is hard to come by. There is never enough. Rich people are greedy. I don't deserve abundance. Making money requires compromising your values. The world is a place of sorosity and competition, and the supply is limited. These beliefs, held at the level of genuine conviction, below the level of conscious examination, are not neutral. They are creative. They are sent out through the law of karma, and they return as conditions. Conditions of lack, of struggle, of the money that arrives and disappears, of the supply that is always just out of reach. Shinn offers specific affirmations for supply. They are worth examining not just for their content, but for the quality of inner alignment they require. God is my unfailing supply, and large sums of money come to me quickly, under grace, in perfect ways. The specificity is deliberate. Large sums, quickly, Under grace, meaning not through struggle or sacrifice, but through the flow of divine supply finding its natural channel. In perfect ways, meaning through routes that serve the highest good of everyone involved. Not in ways that require someone else to lose, not in ways that create debt or obligation, or the distortion of relationship, in perfect ways. The under grace is one of Shinn's most distinctive contributions. She distinguishes between supply that comes under law, meaning through the ordinary channels of effort and payment and the exchange of value in the material world, and supply that comes under grace, meaning through the miraculous, unexpected, divinely routed channels that the infinite intelligence finds when the channel is open. Under grace is always better than under law, because it is not limited by the apparent logic of ordinary cause and effect. It does not require that the supply be traceable through a chain of ordinary causation. It can come through inheritance, through unexpected gifts, through the business idea that arrives in a dream, through the connection made at a party, through the check that comes from a source that had been forgotten, through the opportunity that presents itself from a direction that the planning mind never considered. The supply under grace is not constrained by the individual's assessment of where supply could plausibly come from, and this is precisely the point, because the individual's assessment of where supply could plausibly come from is built from the same limited map as everything else the individual's planning mind constructs. It knows what has happened before, it knows the ordinary channels, it knows the conventional routes. The divine supply is not limited to the conventional routes. But here's the strange part. The affirmation for supply only works from a specific inner place. And the inner place is not manufactured by saying the words. The words are the expression of the inner place, not its cause. The inner place is the genuine, cultivated, spiritually grounded certainty that the supply is real, that the infinite storehouse is not metaphor but actual spiritual reality, that what is needed is already there, already prepared, already moving through the invisible toward manifestation. Without that certainty, with the words on the lips and the doubt in the heart, the affirmation is seed cast on stone. The law responds to the actual inner content, not the verbal surface. And so the practical work, the real work, is the development of genuine inner certainty about the reality of the divine supply, the cultivation of the faith that is the substance of the thing hoped for, the building of the inner knowing through study and prayer, and the reading of stories of supply. Shinn's book is full of them, and the specific, repeated, patient practice of releasing the fear and choosing the faith in the moments when the outer world is showing the fear its evidence and the faith has nothing visible to stand on. This is the discipline, not the saying of the words, the building of the genuine inner certainty from which the words are then the natural expression. And the certainty, once it is genuine, once it has moved from intellectual assent to actual knowing, begins to express itself in the outer world with the same consistency as any other consistent inner world content. The supply begins to find its channel, not immediately always, not dramatically always, sometimes quietly, sometimes through routes so undramatic that the ordinary mind almost misses the connection between the inner shift and the outer movement. But the movement happens, the storehouse opens, under grace, in perfect ways. Every relationship in your life is a mirror, not a flattering mirror, not the mirror of the person who only reflects your best qualities back to you. A precise mirror showing you the content of your inner world in the specific form of the people you attract, the relationships you enter, the patterns that recur across different partners and different friendships and different professional connections. Shinn is not the first to make this observation, but she makes it with a directness that most relationship philosophy avoids. You attract what you are, not what you want, not what you deserve in some moral sense. What you are, what your inner world is currently constituted of, at the level of genuine belief and genuine expectation rather than conscious desire. The person who wants love but whose deep, genuine, below-the-surface conviction is that they are unlovable will not attract lasting love. They will attract confirmation of the unlovability. Relationships that begin with promise and end in the specific pattern of rejection or abandonment or the slow withdrawal that confirms what was feared. Not because love is unavailable to them, because the inner world is sending out, with all the force of genuine conviction, the material that the law of karma returns as the confirming experience. The person who wants a partner who is kind and trustworthy, but whose deep inner expectation, built from early experience, from the specific evidence of the people who formed them, is that people are ultimately unreliable, will keep attracting people who are, eventually, unreliable. Not because all people are unreliable, because the inner certainty acts as a selective force, drawing toward and being drawn toward the people who match the expectation, reading into the behavior of kind and trustworthy people, the early signs of the unreliability that the inner world is certain will eventually arrive. This is not a small mechanism. This is the primary mechanism of relational pattern, and Shinn's prescription for changing it is the same as her prescription for changing everything else in the outer world. Change the inner world, not the behavior, not the type of person you approach or the dating strategy you employ, or the communication patterns you practice. The inner world, the genuine, deep, below-the-surface expectation of what relationships will be. She teaches a specific affirmation for the right relationship, for the one that is held in the divine plan. Not any relationship, not the relationship the individual has decided must be the right one, but the divinely prepared relationship, the one that is specifically and perfectly matched to the individual's highest good. The divine selection has chosen the man who belongs in my life by divine right. I am the woman God has chosen for him, and this day I give thanks that we are drawn together in perfect ways. The specificity again, the acknowledgement of divine right, the gratitude offered before the visible evidence of the relationship's arrival, the faith that treats the relationship as already prepared in the invisible, already on its way, already certain. But here's the strange part. Shinn addresses something that most relationship philosophy skirts carefully. She addresses the specific danger of the fixed idea. The particular person the individual has decided must be the right relationship. The specific someone they have convinced themselves is the one, regardless of whether that someone is actually moving in the direction of the relationship or whether the relationship has the actual qualities that the divine plan would produce. She is not encouraging the pursuit of a specific person through spiritual means. She is teaching something more radical than that. The release of the specific person in favor of the right person. The releasing of the individual's judgment about who the right one is, a judgment necessarily made from limited information and filtered through the inner world's existing patterns, in favor of the divine selection. Because the divine selection has access to information the individual does not have. The divine selection knows not just what the individual consciously desires, but what the individual actually needs. What will actually serve their highest good? What relationship will actually support the expression of the divine plan of their life? And the divine selection is making its choice from the whole field of possibility, not from the narrow field visible to the individual at any given moment. The releasing of the specific person is one of the hardest inner moves available, because the specific person represents the individual's best current assessment of the possible good, and releasing the best current assessment of the possible good feels, from inside the fear, like giving up, like settling for less. It is the opposite. It is opening to more. More than the limited imagination can currently see, more than the pattern-filtered expectation can currently attract, more than the small circle of familiar possibility can currently produce. The right relationship by divine right, which may look nothing like the one being planned for, and which, when it arrives, through the unexpected meeting, through the divinely rooted connection, through the channel that the releasing of the fixed idea finally opened, will have a quality that the planned for relationship could never have had, because it arrived through the grace of the law rather than the effort of the plan. And what arrives through grace always exceeds what the plan could have produced. Not because grace is magical, because grace has access to the whole, and the whole always has more than the part. The body is listening, not metaphorically, not in the poetic sense that how you feel emotionally affects how you feel physically. More directly than that, more specifically, the body, the physical organism that is the visible expression of the inner world, is responding continuously and with remarkable precision to the content of the inner world, to the thoughts held about it, to the words spoken about it, to the fears entertained about it and the beliefs maintained about it, and the specific story told about it. Law of karma then outpictures in its condition. Shinn wrote before the advent of psychoneuroimmunology, before the research on the mind-body connection had produced the specific, measurable, scientifically documented evidence of how psychological states affect immune function and inflammatory processes and the cellular biology of health and disease. She did not have access to the studies on how chronic stress dysregulates the HPA axis, or how emotional states influence gene expression. She did not need them. She was working from observation and from the law. And what she observed was that the body responds to the inner world with the same fidelity as any other outer world condition. that the person who habitually thinks and speaks and believes in illness, whose inner world is organized around the expectation of poor health, around the identification with disease, around the specific, often unconscious conviction that the body is fragile and vulnerable and subject to conditions, will experience the body confirming these expectations with the same reliability as the inner world's expectations are confirmed in every other domain. And that the person who has established genuine inner certainty about the divine reality of perfect health, who can hold, in the face of apparent physical symptoms, the spiritual knowing that the body is a spiritual creation and is subject to spiritual law, begins to see the body respond to that knowing. She cites healings, the kind that the medical model of her time had no framework for explaining, the kind that she attributed to the operation of the law when genuine faith was brought to bear on a physical condition, not as miraculous exceptions to the normal order, as the normal operation of the law, available to anyone who understands and applies it. She teaches specific affirmations for health, not as substitutes for appropriate medical care. She is not reckless about this, but as the spiritual dimension of the full engagement with the condition, the outer medical treatment and the inner spiritual law operating together, each addressing the level of reality it is equipped to address, the outer treatment addressing the visible physical manifestation, the inner work addressing the inner world content that may have contributed to the manifestation and that, unaddressed, will continue to produce it. The body of Jesus Christ is my body now, the perfect body. This formulation will seem extreme to the secular ear. It is not meant as a theological claim about the literal body of the historical figure. It is meant as the specific, spiritually grounded acknowledgement of the divine reality of the perfect, whole, complete body that is the spiritual truth of every human being. The body that exists in the divine mind. The body that the visible physical form is always in the process of expressing more or less fully, depending on the degree to which the inner world is in alignment with the divine reality. But here's the strange part. The application of the law to the body requires something that the application to external supply or external relationship does not quite require in the same way. It requires the specific, sometimes very difficult inner move of non-identification with the condition. The person who has been ill for a long time, who has lived with the condition, organized their life around it, developed an identity that includes it, has established the illness as part of the self-image, as part of the story of who they are. And the law does not distinguish between the things in the self-image that the person endorses and the things that the person would prefer to remove. The law outpictures the self-image. The healing, therefore, requires something more than the application of specific affirmations to the condition. It requires the genuine inner shift of the self-image itself, the withdrawal of the identification from the illness, the genuine inner knowing, not the hope, not the wish, but the knowing that the illness is not the truth of the individual, that the perfect health is the divine truth, that the condition is a temporary outpicturing of inner world content that is now being changed. And this inner knowing, once it is genuine, once it has moved from the effort of the affirmation to the ease of the knowing, begins to express itself in the body with the fidelity with which every other inner world content expresses itself in the outer world. Not always immediately, not always dramatically, sometimes gradually, sometimes through the medical treatment working in ways it had not previously worked, sometimes through the unexpected remission, sometimes through the sudden shift that the medical model cannot explain and that the law makes entirely comprehensible. The body believes what you tell it. More precisely, the body outpictures what the inner world genuinely contains. Change the genuine content, watch the body respond. Unforgiveness is the most expensive luxury available to a human being. Not morally expensive. Energetically, karmically, practically expensive. The price is paid not in the abstract, but in the specific, concrete, daily texture of the life of the person who is carrying it. In the way it keeps the channel of supply constricted. In the way it locks the inner world into relationship with the past rather than opening it to the present and the future. In the way it feeds the law of karma, continuously and reliably, with exactly the material that produces the conditions the unforgiveness is a response to. Shinn makes this case with a directness that is characteristic of her entire approach. She is not making a moral argument for forgiveness, she is making a practical one. Unforgiveness does not hurt the person who is unforgiven as much as it hurts the person who is unforgiving. Because the law operates on the inner world of the sender, and the inner world of the person carrying unforgiveness is an inner world occupied, to whatever degree the unforgiveness persists, by resentment, by grievance, by the specific energetic content of blame. and the law returns the energetic content of blame as conditions that confirm and reinforce the sense of victimhood that the blame is a response to. The cycle is perfect, and it is perfectly imprisoning. The person who was wronged, genuinely wronged, in ways that were real and significant and produced real harm, and who is carrying the unforgiveness of that wrong is not primarily in a relationship with the person who wronged them. They are in a relationship with the karmic content of the unforgiveness. They are sending that content out continuously through the inner world and receiving it back as the conditions of their outer world. The person who wronged them has, in most cases, moved on, is living their life, is not particularly troubled by the unforgiveness being carried for them. The karma of the wrong they committed is their karma to work through by their own process. The karma of the unforgiveness is the karma of the person carrying it. Shinn teaches forgiveness not as the moral high road, but as the path of practical self-interest, as the specific act by which the person releases the karmic content that has been constraining their supply, their relationships, their health, their sense of possibility. As the cutting of the cord in her language, the specific energetic tie that binds the unforgiver to the unforgiven and keeps the inner world in relationship with the past wrong rather than open to the divine supply that the present moment contains. The cord cutting is not pretending the wrong did not happen, not the false reconciliation that requires the suppression of genuine feeling, not the performance of forgiveness while the genuine inner content remains one of grievance. It is the genuine, spiritually grounded inner decision to release the person, to release the expectation that they should have been different, or that they should now do something to make it right, or that justice requires their suffering in proportion to the harm they caused. To release the relationship with the past event and open the inner world to the present moment and whatever the divine plan has prepared for it. Shinn offers a specific formulation for this. She teaches the releasing prayer. Something like, I fully and freely forgive you. I loose you and let you go. I do not know what you are going through, and I do not need to know. I release you to your highest good and I claim my own. The I do not know what you are going through is important. It is the specific acknowledgement that the individual making the release does not have access to the full picture of the person being released, does not know the inner world content that produced the behavior that caused the harm, does not know the history and the fear and the limitation that were operating in the person who did the wrong, and therefore is releasing the judgment that the full picture would require to be accurate. This is not excusing the behavior. It is releasing the judgment about the person behind the behavior, the judgment that the unforgiver cannot accurately make anyway, from the necessarily limited perspective of the person who was harmed. But here's the strange part. The forgiveness must be total to work. Partial forgiveness, the releasing of 90% of the resentment while maintaining the specific grievance about the worst of it, does not fully open the channel. The law responds to the actual content, and the actual content of partial forgiveness is still, in the dimension of the particular retained grievance, the content of unforgiveness. This is not an argument for the impossible standard of perfect forgiveness achieved in a single inner act. It is an acknowledgement that the work is the work, that genuine forgiveness, at the level of genuine inner release rather than verbal acknowledgement, may take time, may require returning to the releasing prayer many times, may require the patient, repeated, honest inner work of genuinely releasing the grip each time it reasserts itself. And each returning to the releasing prayer is not a failure to have already succeeded. It is the continued application of the spiritual medicine to the wound that is still in the process of healing. Until the inner content genuinely changes, until the person can genuinely think of the one who wronged them and feel not the weight of the grievance but the specific, quiet, clean feeling of the genuinely released, of the cord genuinely cut, the channel genuinely open, the inner world genuinely free of the relationship with the past that was costing the present its supply. That release, when it is genuine, is one of the most powerful things available to a human being. Not because it is virtuous, because it opens the channel. And the channel opened is where the divine supply has always been waiting to flow. There is a thing that happens between the decree and the manifestation. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It arrives without fanfare and it overstays its welcome, and it looks from the inside exactly like nothing happening. Shinn calls it the wait, and she gives it more serious treatment than most of her interpreters acknowledge. Because the wait, the specific period between the genuine inner alignment with the desired outcome and the visible appearance of that outcome in the outer world, is where most people give up, where most applications of the spiritual law fail. Not because the law has stopped operating, because the person has stopped holding the faith, has allowed the evidence of the outer world, the continued apparent absence of what was decreed, to talk the inner world out of its certainty, has let the passing of time without visible result become the evidence that the law did not work, has slipped from the knowing back into the hoping, and then from the hoping into the doubting, and then from the doubting into the conclusion that the whole thing was wishful thinking. And in that conclusion, in the genuine inner release of the faith, the channel closes. Not because the divine supply withdrew, because the inner world content that the channel requires, the genuine certainty, the faith that is the substance of the thing hoped for, has been replaced by the inner world content that the channel cannot carry. The doubt, the fear, the evidence-based conviction that nothing is coming. And the law, faithful to the inner content, begins to manifest the doubt rather than the original decree. Shinn describes this with the image of the seed. The farmer who plants the seed does not dig it up every morning to see if it is growing. The farmer trusts the law, knows that the law is operating beneath the surface in the darkness where it cannot yet be seen, knows that the apparent absence of visible evidence is not the absence of process, but the normal, necessary, invisible stage of the process. Waits, does the surface work of keeping the ground clear and the water available, and trusts the law to do what the law does. The prayer or the decree is the planting of the seed. The waiting, the patient, faith-held, non-anxious waiting, is the allowing of the invisible process to do its work. The visible manifestation is the harvest. But the farmer who digs up the seed in anxiety over its apparent non-growth destroys the thing the law was already producing. Shinn distinguishes between what she calls the set time and the time the individual has decided the manifestation should arrive. These are rarely the same. The individual's timeline is built from impatience and from the specific urgency of the circumstances, from the rent due and the bill unpaid and the relationship needed now and the health that cannot wait. These are real urgencies. Shinn does not dismiss them. But the set time, the divine timing of the manifestation, is determined not by the urgency of the individual's circumstance, but by the readiness of the channel, by the degree to which all the conditions that the perfect manifestation requires are prepared. The people and circumstances and resources that need to be in position for the supply to flow through without obstruction or distortion. And sometimes those conditions require time to arrange. Not because the divine supply is slow, because the perfect manifestation is precise, because supply that arrives before the channel is ready will flow through in distorted form, will appear and disappear, will create as many complications as it resolves, will be the right thing at the wrong time in the wrong form, and therefore not quite the right thing. The divine timing serves the divine plan, which serves the individual's highest good, even when it does not serve the individual's urgent timeline. But here's the strange part. Shinn does not teach resigned waiting. She teaches active waiting. The specific combination of continued inner alignment, the maintained faith, the continued speaking of the decree, the patient holding of the certainty, and the outer action that is aligned with the direction of the desired outcome. Not the frantic action of the fearful ego trying to force the supply through its own channels. The aligned action of the person who is moving in the direction that the guidance indicates, doing the next right thing as the guidance reveals it, staying in motion without being driven by anxiety. The motion is the signal of faith. The motion says, I believe it is coming. I am acting as if it is coming. I am making the preparations for what the decree has established as already certain. And the motion aligned with the faith keeps the channel open, keeps the inner world in the posture of reception rather than the posture of resignation, keeps the flow moving in the direction of manifestation while the divine timing completes the invisible preparation. The wait is not passive. It is the most active thing available. The maintenance of faith against the evidence of the outer world's apparent delay. The patient, non-anxious, trust-filled continuation of the decree while the invisible works toward the visible. It is the courage to not give up before the harvest, to not dig up the seed, to trust the law, even in the dark, even when nothing is visible, even when the outer world is producing every evidence that the waiting has been wasted. The law is always operating, the seed is always growing, the harvest is always coming. The only question is whether you will be there when it arrives, still holding the faith, still speaking the decree, still trusting the set time, even now. The past is not your problem. This is one of the most liberating and most misunderstood aspects of Shinn's entire framework. It sounds like it is dismissing the reality of past experience. Like it is telling the person who was harmed or limited or shaped by their history that the history does not matter, that they should simply get over it, that the past is irrelevant to the present. This is not what she is saying. What she is saying is more precise. The past in itself has no creative power in the present moment. The past event cannot reach forward and produce present conditions. Only the inner world can do that. Only the thought held now, the belief maintained now, the expectation present now, but in this moment, is the creative force that the law of karma is responding to. But the past has usually installed something in the inner world that is doing exactly that. The past has produced, through the specific experiences and their specific emotional charge, the beliefs and fears and expectations that now occupy the inner world and now feed the law with the material that produces the present conditions. The past experience is not the problem. The past experience has ended. It is the inner world content that the past experience installed, the belief, the fear, the expectation, that is still operating now, that is still the active creative content of the inner world, that the law is still responding to. And the inner world content, however it was installed, is not permanent. It can be changed. Not by changing the past cannot be changed, but by changing the current inner world content that the past installed, by recognizing the belief and choosing a different belief, by acknowledging the fear and choosing in its place the faith, by seeing the expectation and replacing it with the decree of what the divine plan holds. This is where Shinn's framework and the contemporary understanding of psychological change, represented by the work of people like Huberman and the broader neuroscience of plasticity and habit change, align more than might initially appear. Not in the mechanism, Shinn is not speaking in neurological terms, but in the principle that the past is not destiny, that what was installed can be changed, that the architecture of the inner world, however long it has been organized in a particular configuration, is not fixed. The game is always played in the present moment, not in the past, which has ended, not in the future, which has not yet arrived, in the present, in the specific now of the thought being held, the word being spoken, the faith being maintained or abandoned, the decree being spoken, or the fear being entertained. This is where the game is being played. And this, the specific now, is the only place the individual has any actual influence over the game. Shinn teaches this not as an abstract principle, but as a practical instruction. The person who spends the present moment reviewing the past, rehearsing the wrongs, replaying the failures, maintaining the relationship with what has already happened, is spending the only creative currency they have, the now, the present moment, the only moment that the law is responding to. They are spending it on something that cannot be changed. While the future, which can be shaped by what is sent out from the present, goes without the creative attention that would shape it toward the desired outcome. This is not a criticism of healthy psychological processing of past experience. That processing has its place and its value. But the processing is different from the rehearsing. The processing moves through the past experience to a new present moment inner world content. The rehearsing stays in the past experience, cycling through it, keeping it alive in the present inner world where the law responds to it as if it were a present creation. The practical instruction is this. In this moment, what is in the inner world? Not what was in it yesterday, not what is likely to be in it tomorrow. What is in it now? What thought is being held? What expectation is active? What belief is operating? What is being sent out through the law of karma from this specific present moment? Because this specific present moment is the game board. And the move being made right now, the thought, the word, the inner orientation, is the move that the law is responding to. But here's the strange part. The present moment is also the place of maximum grace. Because the present moment, whatever the history that led to it, whatever the inner world content that has been producing the conditions, is always new, is always fresh, is always the opportunity for a different sending out than the one that produced the current conditions. The person with a long history of lack can, in this moment, speak the decree of supply. The person with a long history of difficult relationships can, in this moment, affirm the divine selection of the right relationship. The person whose body has been manifesting illness can, in this moment, hold the spiritual reality of divine health. Not once, not as a single heroic act of faith that then carries the momentum indefinitely. But in this moment, and then in the next moment, and in the next, the patient, consistent, moment-by-moment choosing of the inner world content that the law will then reflect back in the outer world. This is the game, played in the present moment, on the board of the inner world, with the moves of thought and word and faith. The past does not determine the next move. The present moment always begins fresh, and the fresh beginning is always available, right now, in this moment, in the specific, unrepeatable, creative now that is the only game board there is. Sometimes the law moves so fast it leaves the reasoning mind behind. Shinn documents case after case, she calls them demonstrations, in which the specific application of spiritual law to a specific situation produced results so rapid, so unexpected, so apparently impossible given the logic of the circumstances, that the word miraculous is almost unavoidable. The money that appeared from a completely unexpected source within 24 hours of the specific decree. The reconciliation that happened after years of estrangement, without any visible human effort, following the release of the unforgiveness and the blessing sent in its place. The health that shifted following the single genuine act of inner alignment. The right person who appeared at the exact moment they were needed, before any ordinary channel of introduction had been activated. She does not present these as exceptions. She presents them as demonstrations of the law operating at full capacity, as what the law does when the channel is fully clear, when the faith is genuinely held, when the inner world is genuinely aligned with the spiritual reality being decreed. She calls this the divine activity, the specific movement of infinite intelligence through the channels that faith has opened, producing the visible result through routes that the logical, planning, cause and effect mind could not have anticipated. And the divine activity has a quality that distinguishes it from the ordinary production of the results through ordinary effort. The quality is of ease, of the thing happening without the grinding, effortful, resource-depleting work that the same result would have required through ordinary means, of the supply flowing rather than being dragged, of the door opening rather than being broken down. Shinn uses the image of the Red Sea, Moses and the Israelites at the water's edge, the Egyptian army behind them, no visible route forward, no ordinary solution, no plan that the logical mind could construct that had any prospect of succeeding. And then the word, the decree spoken from genuine faith, the inner alignment with the divine reality that the situation required, and the water parted. The impossible route opened. The people walked through on dry ground. She is not teaching this as a story about ancient history. She is teaching it as a template for the present-day operation of the law. The situation that presents as impossible, that has no ordinary solution, no visible route, no logical answer, is precisely the situation in which the divine activity is most clearly demonstrated. Because the ordinary solutions being absent, the faith cannot be confused with the ordinary solutions. The result, when it comes, is clearly not the product of ordinary cause and effect. It is the law operating without the limiting intervention of the logical mind. And this is the paradox that runs through Shinn's entire work. The logical mind, the planning, strategizing, route-calculating mind is not the enemy of the law, but it is the limiter of it. Because the logical mind, by definition, can only see what logic can see, can only conceive what the existing knowledge makes conceivable, can only route the supply through the channels that ordinary experience has established as possible. But the law is not limited to the channels that ordinary experience has established as possible. The law has access to the whole, and the whole contains resources, routes, channels, and possibilities that are genuinely beyond the horizon of any individual's ordinary experience. The law can route supply through channels that do not yet exist in visible form, can arrange encounters that no existing social network has established, can shift the timing and the circumstances of people and situations in ways that the logical calculation of probabilities would assign near zero likelihood. But here's the strange part. The divine activity is not invoked by the desperation of the impossible situation. Desperate people in impossible situations do not automatically receive the parting of the Red Sea. Desperation in Shinn's framework is the inner world content of fear, and fear, sent out through the law, does not attract the divine activity. It attracts the confirming evidence of what is feared. The divine activity is invoked by the specific quality of genuine faith in an apparently impossible situation, by the person who can look at the Egyptian army and the uncrossable water and hold in the inner world the certainty that the divine supply has already found the route, that the way where there appears to be no way is already open in the invisible, that the manifestation of the divine reality is already underway. That quality of faith, maintained in the face of the apparently impossible, is the thing that the logical mind cannot manufacture, cannot produce by effort or by will or by the repeated saying of words, while the inner world remains in the grip of the fear that the situation appears to justify. It is the gift of genuine spiritual development, of the inner world that has been, through patient practice and through the accumulated evidence of smaller demonstrations, cultivated to the place where the genuine knowing, the faith that is the substance of things hoped for, can hold even when the outer evidence is entirely against it. And when it can hold there, when the genuine knowing can stay present in the face of the Egyptian army, the water parts. Not because God favours the faithful, because the channel is fully open, because the inner world content of genuine faith allows the divine supply to move through without the constriction of the fear that would otherwise constrain it. The miracle is the law, operating without obstruction, through the channel that genuine faith has fully opened. The Egyptian army is whatever is pressing hardest in your life right now, whatever situation has no visible route, whatever challenge the logical mind has concluded is beyond solving. The water is what appears to be in the way, and the decree, spoken from the genuine inner knowing, from the faith that has been cultivated through practice and through the understanding of the law, is Moses' staff raised over the sea. The divine activity is already moving, in the invisible, preparing the route that the outer world has not yet shown. The only question is whether the faith is genuine enough to hold until the outer world catches up, until the water parts, until the divine activity, moving in the invisible, manifests in the visible, as it always does. For those who can hold the faith long enough, everything has been pointing at this. Not the end of the game. There is no end of the game, not in the sense of a final score or a permanent arrival, but the understanding of it. The moment when the rules that have always been operating, that have been producing your life's conditions with the same fidelity as every other operation of law, become visible enough to be worked with rather than simply subject to. The moment when you stop being played by the game and begin, however imperfectly and however incrementally, to play it. Florence Scovel Shinn spent her entire adult life trying to communicate this moment to anyone who would listen. Not from the position of someone who had arrived, she was careful about this, careful not to claim a perfection of demonstration that her own life did not consistently support, but from the position of someone who had understood the rules well enough to teach them, who had watched them operate in enough different lives and enough different situations to be genuinely convinced of their consistency, and from the position of someone who believed, with the specific personal, experientially grounded conviction that is different from adopted belief, that the rules were fundamentally good, that the law, for all its impersonality, operated in a universe that was fundamentally benevolent, that the game, once understood, was not a trap or a test or an arbitrary challenge, but an invitation to the specific, available, genuine adventure of a human life lived in conscious alignment with the laws that govern it. This is perhaps her most radical claim and her most personal one. Not the claim about the law of karma, not the claim about the power of the word, not the claim about the divine plan or the infinite storehouse or the operation of the law of love. Those are all claims about mechanism, about how the game works, the claim that the game is worth playing, that the universe that contains these laws is a universe that is fundamentally on your side, is a claim about the nature of the reality in which the game is set. And it is the claim that most directly challenges the modern secular worldview, with its assumption of cosmic indifference. Shinn does not argue this claim, she lives it. Her book is the expression of someone who has lived it, who has found, in the specific practice of aligning the inner world with the spiritual reality, and watching the outer world respond, not just functional results, but something more, something that the functional results were always in service of, the experience of being in relationship with something larger than the individual self, of being not alone in the game, but supported, of discovering that the supply is real and the guidance is real and the divine plan is real, and the infinite intelligence that underlies reality is genuinely interested, not in a personal anthropomorphic way, but in the way that a law is interested, consistently, completely, without exception, in the flourishing of every individual who learns to work with it. Now think about this for a moment. The entire content of her teaching, the law of karma, the law of love, the power of the word, the role of faith, the divine plan, the infinite storehouse, the practice of forgiveness, the cultivation of intuition, the patience of divine timing, the possibility of the divine activity, all of it is in the service of this single fundamental shift. From the inner world of fear to the inner world of faith, from the orientation of lack to the orientation of supply, from the posture of defense against a hostile universe to the posture of receptivity to a benevolent one, from the game played unconsciously by rules not understood, producing the recurring conditions that the unconscious inner world has been consistently seeding, to the game played consciously, with understanding, with the specific, practical, genuinely applicable knowledge of the rules that have always been operating. This is not a small shift, it is the shift. The one that changes everything that follows from it, because it changes the premise on which everything else rests. The premise about what is available, what is possible, what the universe's orientation toward the individual actually is. Most people discover the rules gradually, through the accumulation of evidence that something is operating beneath the surface of ordinary cause and effect, the pattern that keeps recurring, the coincidence that is too precise, the blessing that arrived through the unexpected channel, the prayer that was answered in the unexpected form, the decree that moved something that logic said was fixed. Each of these is a lesson, a demonstration, evidence of the law operating, evidence that the game has rules and that the rules are learnable, and that the learning of them changes what the game produces. Shinn's gift is the shortcut. Not to the demonstrations themselves, those are available to everyone who applies the rules, and they cannot be shortcut, but to the understanding, to the framework within which the demonstrations make sense, to the vocabulary for what is happening when the invisible moves and the visible responds. But here's the strange part. The understanding, however accurate, does not play the game for you. You can read Shinn's book and understand every principle and agree with every claim and remain, in the concrete conditions of your actual life, exactly where you were before the reading. Because the game is not played in the understanding, the game is played in the inner world. In the specific present moment content of the thought being held and the word being spoken and the faith being maintained or abandoned. And the inner world does not change through understanding alone, it changes through practice, through the patient, repeated, sometimes discouraging and sometimes extraordinary practice of choosing the inner content that the law will reflect as the desired outer condition. The practice is the work, not the reading, not the agreeing, not the intellectual acceptance of the framework. The practice, the choosing of the thought, the speaking of the word, the maintaining of the faith when the outer world is providing every evidence that the faith is misplaced. The releasing of the unforgiveness, the blessing of the enemy, the decreeing of the divine plan, the opening of the channel by the releasing of the specific plan, the patience of the divine timing, the courage to hold the certainty in the dark. This is the game, played daily, in the ordinary moments, in the thought that arises in the morning before the day begins, in the words spoken about the bill and the body and the relationship, in the inner orientation brought to the difficulty and the uncertainty and the apparently closed door. This is the game, and you have been playing it all along, without the rules, and now, with them, imperfectly, gradually, with the patient repetition that the nervous system and the soul both require for genuine change, you can play it differently. Not because the universe has changed, because you have understood what the universe has always been offering. The supply is there, the guidance is available, the divine plan is prepared, the channel is open or can be opened, the law is operating, it has always been operating, the game has always been being played. The only thing that changes now is whether you are playing it, or whether it is still playing you. Shinn's answer, delivered with the directness and the conviction of a woman who found these rules in her own life and could not keep them to herself, is the same answer it has always been. Play it, consciously, with faith, with the word, with the understanding of the law, and with the specific, quiet, unshakable certainty that the universe in which the game is set is not your adversary. It never was. It has been waiting all along for you to understand the rules and to play.